Oh.
Dr. Green,
Here.
Mrs. Heater,
Here.
Mr. Huron,
Here.
Mr. Reichard, Mr. Vognetz,
Here.
Mr. Brookhart.
Here. 1.3, June 12th, 2023 board meeting minutes. The board will take action to approve the meeting minutes from the June 12th, 2023 board meeting as presented. Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Mr. Clauser?
Second.
And a second, Mr. Vognetz. Any questions, comments? Gary, would you roll call?
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 2.1, reports, Finance and Budget Committee. Mr. Vognetz.
We will have a Finance and Budget Committee meeting in August when Mr. Sokolowski is up to par.
Okay, thank you. Academic Affairs, Ms. Heater.
Sure. We didn't have a June meeting, but we'll have one on Wednesday from 6:30 to 7:30, and we'll be talking about assessment results, early ones from 2022 to 23. Talk about letters training, which I'm thrilled, and we'll be going to talk about the purpose of the administrative retreat.
Buildings and Grounds, Mr. Reichert is not here. Is there anyone else, or did we have a meeting?
I can add, we did have a meeting, a couple of things that we talked about. One is construction on the back door of the middle school by the kitchen is started, should be done by the end of this week. The playground at the primary school has been finished, looks great, kids are on it and using it, so kudos to Mr. George and his team for that. In addition, the middle school floors at this point in time, the project actually got started today. They put the first coat of primer down. We're really hoping that that makes a significant impact on the aesthetic look of the middle school, because that downstairs, if you've been in there, is very, very dark. We're hoping to brighten up that floor space so that it's a more inviting area for the students. And then the track project, the washing and restriping and some of the repairs, is scheduled to start on July 24th and will probably take anywhere from 3 to 5 days, depending upon how long depending upon weather and how long it takes for the restriping to go down.
Anything else on Buildings and Grounds? And Mr. Moser, I know you were there. I asked Mr. Sokolowski if, following the Liberty Valley project, if we could get some kind of a summary of
Yes.
that.
He and I talked about that the next day, and he's on vacation, so
Yeah,
definitely
not in a hurry
within
for it.
within a 2-week span.
Yeah, at whatever point you can get it finished to be great. Thank you.
I got a question. We all got an email about the door at the primaries in the gym.
Yes.
What is that about?
A panel popped, I believe a panel popped off, but I'm going to turn it over. I know I have not seen it myself, but I believe that the company that usually comes in to fix those things was unavailable at that moment. So I don't know, and I haven't gotten an update on that, but I don't know if anybody, did I get it about right?
Yeah, I wasn't. That door was found.
My understanding is they tried to push it open and it came off of the hinge system somehow. So it wasn't secure and stable, which is why then we prevented anybody from going in that space.
Okay, thank you.
Real quick, though, the disposition of the gym.
Yeah, so where we're at, the floors were refinished. Mr. George did sign off on the middle school floor. The company did a fantastic job. However, he was unwilling to sign off on the high school floor because there are spots where the last finish was not taken down far enough. So when they put the new finish on top, several spots have actually bubbled up. So he refused to sign off on that, and until they come and actually do an assessment on when they can do it and what they need to do in order to remedy the situation, we're holding off on letting anybody in there because we don't want them to be able to say, obviously, well, you went on it too early. So as soon as we know, as soon as that company has been in to assess and we get some plan for rectification, we'll be able to open that up prior to them actually refinishing it, because it's not going to hurt anything for them to play on it, because they're going to literally sand it back down and refinish it again. We just have to wait until they get here to look at it. And I do not have an update as to whether or not they.
You know when we'd be able to find that out?
I will ask Mr. George tomorrow. What I will say is that in the meantime, any group that wants gym space, we certainly have the middle school gym as availability as a backup for right now. But I would think that certainly this week we should get an update from.
So once they see that, then the plan would be that it's not an unsafe condition, it's more of just a strategy to get it reconciled to our satisfaction, and then say, this is it, all right, now we're gonna temporarily use it,
Yes.
and find a pocket of time that fits.
Yes,
Best.
we'll reschedule, yes. Yeah, but in the interim, teams will be able to get on there and use it because it's not a safety hazard, it's literally flaking of a finish.
Done properly.
I'm pushing, it's a little time sensitive, summers are really short, and there's a lot of folks that are looking to use the gym for league play and stuff this time of year, so there's an
We're
added
certainly
reason.
happy to allow people in the middle school if that's helpful.
Athletics and Extracurricular Activities Committee, Ms. Cooper.
We had our meeting on the 6th. We talked about the revised Athletic Hall of Fame bylaws, which is on the agenda tonight. Competitive cheer and girls wrestling are all on to be approved. The volleyball will be moving from middle school to high school. And the track cleaning and repairs is going to start July 24th. I think that's right. And we were presented with the potential to co-op with Warrior Run for boys lacrosse.
Okay. Did you say volleyball's moving from middle school to high school?
Correct.
Okay. This year?
Yes.
Yes, the reason for that is because the basketball hoops at the middle school can no longer go up without about $30,000 of
Will be in the way
repair.
of the,
So they would
Got
be
it.
in the way of volleyball.
okay.
We are able to use the high school gym floors, especially with the resurfacing of the floor.
And what we will do is we don't have the lines for the main court at this point in time, but we're not the only school in that situation who has recently instituted volleyball. We can use a high durability vinyl tape for those lines for this season, and then next year when the floor is refinished, we can include the striping in that.
Okay. And
Coach
volleyball's in the
Ross is
fall.
excited.
Volleyball's in the fall,
Yes.
so it doesn't impact basketball.
Right, so I would say we had moved to the middle school to just kind of, we thought that would work and also just have one sport sort of off campus, but everything else in the fall is an outside sport anyway, so it will work.
Okay,
And if we were going to make an investment to a building, we thought high school over.
okay. And lacrosse, if we
middle.
co-op, does that impact our number, classification? No, Brian, I see you. No? Okay. What do we play in lacrosse and how many classifications do they have? Okay. And AAA is significantly higher. That makes sense. Okay, because it's big in Philly and those schools are huge. Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments on extracurriculars? Health and Wellness Committee?
Nothing new to report. We'll plan on meeting next quarter, probably piggybacked on top of the Academic Affairs Committee. As you know, the plan was presented and things are moving forward.
Thank you. Okay. Health insurance?
We can actually probably close that committee since negotiations are coming to a halt.
Could you make a note of that, Terry? We put that in the minutes. Molly? Okay, CMAVTS, Mr. Clauser.
Yeah, the construction project is ongoing, a little bit ahead of schedule. And this week we'll be conducting the final interviews for the superintendent's position. That's it.
Okay, thank you. I asked this in the fall, how many students we have committed? Do we know about how many are committed to going?
So in the
this year's-
enrollment report tonight, I just have our numbers that we ended the year because they haven't given us our kind of for sure numbers for next year. But at this point, we're looking at what we've been told at this point is just 13 ninth graders.
13 ninth graders, and we had about 16 or 17?
17, I believe, at one point last
And
year.
historically, we've had about 35, 36.
35 is about our allotment.
Yes, so we ended the year with 17 ninth graders, 27 10th graders, 32 11th, and 30 12th. So historically, we've kind of been in that like low 30 to 35 range,
Okay.
but the last 2 years significantly lower.
Okay, and I know I'm being redundant because I asked this question in the fall. Do we know why at this point? Sorry, Chris, go
Well,
ahead.
then, I was going to dovetail off that. I was just going to just measure that our realities against other districts. Are other districts seeing any level of decline? Is this kind of a wave that's coming and it's happening to everybody? Or is this an anomaly that we're just kind of getting our head around now to try to, hard to say.
Some,
Probably both.
so, yeah, it's a little bit of each, I think. Some schools from conversations that we've had, are seeing the same level of interest in terms of it going down. There are some that their enrollments have gone down a little bit, but there is a really high interest. And so just to be clear, there's, we kind of pay per student per daily membership. So if another district was to have a higher daily membership and take some of our seats, that would affect that rolling average. And I'm not exactly sure what that formula looks like off the top of my head. I believe it's a 4-year rolling average though, for daily, for daily membership. And we pay per that daily membership. So right now it is very likely that we're paying more in our daily membership than what our actual students are going there, because it's
An
a four-
average.
it's
just
a rolling
4-year.
average.
Right.
Yeah.
So it takes time for those lower numbers
adjust.
to catch up to the reality of what we pay.
Any other questions, comments?
It's just, again, I know we talked about, but there's some value to explore just a tad further here. I mean, that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's an
Yes.
anomaly, oh, so be it. If it's not an anomaly, it's a huge deal for the future. If that trend continues to say, I think it's an important thing. Because if we're seeing a similar kind of forecast for other districts, it'd be nice to know kind of the why. Maybe it's just a one-off, an outlier,
Yeah.
off year, COVID impact, I don't know, but that's alarming. If we go from 33 and now we're talking at 14,
2 years in a row.
13,
Yeah, 2 years in a row. We're down
big deal.
low.
And another factor is some of those numbers started higher, but have come down through attrition over the last couple of years. So we start some classes with higher numbers, and then a year later, 2 years later, those numbers have been decreasing from that specific cohort, which we said.
And that's out of the ordinary too.
Yes,
For the number to go down, they get there and they usually stay.
yes.
So that's different too.
Especially in year 3 or year 4.
Right.
We have actually seen more returns in year 3 or year 4 than we
Okay.
have historically.
When a student comes back, do we sit down to actually talk to them? What was the reasoning? Why did you want to?
Perhaps Mr. Varholic could answer that question. I do not have any firsthand knowledge of whether or not there has been a process in place for that to happen.
All of those students would need to meet with a guidance counselor to get a schedule here, and Mr. Mays, who's our intervention specialist at the high school, also provides some services at VOTEC. So I think like Mr. Varholic is sharing, we'd have anecdotally the story on every child, but not necessarily a summary report. But I would say anecdotally, there are some students coming back by choice. We're getting some students who have talked about being encouraged to come back because of some discipline issues. So those feel like concerns to me.
I think there is certainly room and space. It's a great point to formalize a process that when a student comes back, we do have, we'll call it a re-entrance interview almost, rather than an exit interview of what is the reasoning, because it could potentially help us head off some of what we're talking about here in terms of, well, maybe we can intervene before it gets to the point of a student spending 2 years in one school and then wanting to return to Danville. Not that we don't love to have them here, but what is best for the students has to be kept at the forefront of all of our decisions.
I mean, I think it'd be great for all the districts to do it, because it could, it could point out some issues that VOTEC may be having that's causing these kids to come back. That'd be great information to have.
I apologize for the noise. We got disconnected from Jennifer, so we're recalling here. I do know that Miss Wenrick, as our special ed director, has been very involved with special ed students there, even though there is a special ed director, and also attends IEP meetings. And when there are situations where a student with an IEP, for some reason, is encouraged to come back or is choosing to come back, she's been heavily involved in that.
Sounds like we have a lot of questions, a lot of information we'd like, and seems like it's building in an educational delivery model that we've really valued over the last several decades, and right now, I don't want to say it's broken, but I think there's a lot of questions.
Yeah, and I certainly would just want to say that I think a vocational education is appropriate for many of our students. And so
Sure.
we want to
Yeah.
make sure as a district that we have that opportunity. And it certainly is concerning when we're seeing less students choose that and a need to understand why that's happening.
Specifically regionally, many of our school to career paths are through vocational entries in this region in manufacturing. There are a lot of skills, a lot of vocational skills that our students, first of all, are interested in, but also we know would prepare them very, very well for post-graduation work.
We've had so many people have great experiences there, and it's concerning that our kids don't want to go, and those that are there are coming back. That's for sure. Anything else on VOTEC? Okay, CSIU, Dr. Faulkner.
Yeah, so I was, on the 27th of June, I was able to do the orientation, the official sort of orientation to the CSIU. And one of the big takeaways was I really did not even know how much they do and how many supports and services that they have that I'm sure different folks in the schools are utilizing to a certain extent, but they have support for almost everything you could imagine that may be challenging or difficult for kiddos, particularly kids and families who are the most vulnerable, experiencing homelessness, foster care, teen pregnancy. I mean, really anything you can imagine, they have supports. And so I was very pleased to kind of go through that process and hope to be able to keep updated. I know, just so many resources to our districts and our teachers and stuff. The other thing was I guess they're working on a lot of grant writing. They're always working on grant writing. I know one of the things that directly impacts our district is some of the free trainings that have been made available through the SAMHSA Project Aware Impact Grant. I know Molly has disseminated that stuff, and there have been folks who are taking advantage of that. They've got one on youth mental health first aid and QPR, which is a suicide prevention training, August 2nd and August 8th, I believe. And there are a lot more to come through that grant. There will be a lot of free trainings and professional development opportunities, not just for teachers, but for pretty much anybody in the school system and the larger community. So great resource that the IU is able to offer, and was really pleased to see what they're doing in the way that they can support our kiddos in the district.
The youth mental health first aid I did send out to all families in the district, but would certainly encourage people in the community to go to the CSIU website for more information or find that email because they are free and they would be really appropriate for anyone who's just engaged with youth in any way in the community. So like an AYSO soccer coach or just someone whose house is the teen hangout on the street or whatever the case might be, similar to how you'd go to become like first aid certified, CPR certified. This is just for mental health. I actually go to that training on Wednesday mornings. So they have several dates throughout the summer for that.
Yeah.
Okay. ITC.
Nothing to report, Wayne?
Okay, thank you. Head Start. Mr. Reichert is not here. Anything we need to report?
I would just share that they had went through a federal monitoring program and just got results back this past week that were very positive, and Linda will be sharing them with the board.
Okay. And CS Trust, Mr. Sokolowski is now here, and he'll be reporting on that when he's back. I don't even think there have been any meetings recently since our rates were established. 3.1, any other questions on any of the reports that we just had before we move on? Superintendent's report, Dr. Need.
Thank you. So I'll start with enrollment, but enrollment is a little tricky in July as we're mid-school year. I just wanted you to see sort of two sets of numbers here so you could see where we ended the year and where we're currently registered for this school year. So like in kindergarten, for example, last year we ended with 177. We only have 138 currently registered, so I'll use this as a public announcement. Shake the bushes. If your child's coming to kindergarten, get them registered so that we can get those class lists ready to go. You'll see that the other grade levels look kind of similar as cohorts move through that K to 12 continuum. Like first grade, we ended the year with 176. We'll have 181 first graders next year in terms of who is currently registered. And you see that happening at Liberty Valley, the middle school, and the high school in those numbers. Those VOTEC numbers are where we ended last school year, and we have not gotten updated numbers there yet. On the next screen, you'll see our non-public enrollment. Those numbers are definitely skewed at this point in time because a lot of the Christian schools and things like that haven't done their sign-ups yet for next school year. So those are the numbers that we currently have. I would anticipate those adjusting before August. I have just a few budget updates or budget information items that I wanted to share. First, I just wanted to share with all of the board members the status of the 23-24 state budget. And so, as you know, when we shared in our budget presentations, a good chunk of our revenue sources do come through the state budget. So right now, the House has adopted the budget bill, which was previously adopted by the Senate, so that is positive, if you will, but the completed bill does include the Lifeline scholarships. That's money that students could use to take to a private school. The governor has not signed the budget bill, and he is against those Lifeline scholarships, so there's still sort of some hang up in the state government on that issue. Also, even if the governor would sign the bill, there's sort of a matching bill, if you will, called the fiscal code bill that prescribes exactly how the funds are to be dispersed that is not passed yet. So we need both of those bills to pass to actually know exactly what our state allocations are. And so that fiscal code bill has been completed by the House but is in the hands of the Senate right now. So we have kind of the budget bill potentially being held up by Lifeline scholarships, and also then the fiscal code bill has not gotten through yet. And then there is, at this point, no omnibus school code bill. That's when they change any sort of school code laws, and we're being told we won't hear anything there until the fall. There's nothing really on the horizon, but this is sort of normal state budget timeline. Even though we have to have a budget passed by June 30th, this sort of fits in their world.
And yeah, we'll see pressure come up as state agencies other than public schools start feeling the budget crunch.
Right.
And they're also mandated to have theirs finished on June 30th.
Right. Yeah,
Right,
they
they
just
just
don't.
don't.
They just
Right.
don't. And there's nobody to hold them accountable.
Right.
Right. And there is a cyber charter reform bill that's being discussed, but we're kind of being told that we probably won't hear anything about any sort of education-related bill until fall at the earliest at this point in time. So just wanted you to know that we're keeping tabs on that. On the next item you'll see that's budget related, just wanted people to be aware that certainly we've gotten attention regionally that there have been some layoffs at Geisinger. The public message around that is that it's not necessarily connected at all with merger and things. I don't, know the truth behind that, but that certainly is a major employer here locally. So just want the board to be aware that that's something that we need to keep tabs on as a school district in terms of local revenue sources moving forward and how that impacts the Danville community. The next item that's budget related is you're going to see on the agenda tonight an approval for a job description for a mental health specialist position. This is a recommendation from the Mental Health Task Force and was a part of their presentation. It would be a position to benefit students at the middle school. We would be looking for a licensed professional counselor or a licensed clinical social worker, and we have advertised this as an anticipated position right now. This is not in the original budget, but the cost can be absorbed based on some resignations we've had, so there won't be an increase to the budget based on this position. So just wanted to share that you would see that.
Wrapped up in the state budget as well is potentially money to help offset costs for mental health supports in each school building. So when that passes, it may free up we may have more funding available to us to help satisfy that.
And I think one thing to add about, I would think, is that there are lots of grants that are being made available at the federal and state level. They're specifically dedicated to mental health, as well as other resources and training, collaboration, and stuff that, you know, is worthwhile to consider and view. And if folks can partner with some of the local community organizations in our district, I think it makes the most sense. And last thing, sorry.
No, go for it.
Just very pleased to see this on the agenda, right? We talked about when the mental health committee meeting and that we were going to make actionable steps. It's a great example of taking a step towards making sure that we're serving the whole child in the district. So we're just very pleased to see this.
Thank you. We're excited about it too. The last budget item I just wanted to share is that we're really thankful that Mike is on board as our business manager. And he discovered that there were 86 properties regionally that failed to get credit for the homestead farmstead deduction that has to do with us being a dual county district. And he has already manually verified which families those are, and corrected tax bills have already been reprinted and communicated with those families, and has a process so that will not happen again in the future.
Have we communicated with the tax collectors?
Yes, he has.
Good.
They've been notified, and next year he has a new plan for working with them.
All right, great. Thank you.
So the problem's been resolved for this year and for the future, but
Okay.
I just wanted to name that.
Okay.
And then next, just wanted to just share a couple updates. So I think Mrs. Heater mentioned an admin retreat. I think when we hear the word retreat, sometimes we picture laying on a beach somewhere with our sun hat on or something like that. And that is not the kind of retreat the D'Alembert Area School District will have. But we will be gathering as an administrative team next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I would like to thank John Gerbuski, who's in community relations at Geisinger. He's allowing us to use a conference room at the Geisinger location downtown. And essentially, we just like to get off campus together as a team where we clear our schedules of any other kind of meetings, and we can focus on time for team building, but also time for really intensive 2023-2024 planning. So we have all 3 of those days cleared to be together to be very prepared for next school year.
I just want to say I'm incredibly excited for the team to be able to get to work on that agenda. It is significant. It is important work, and certainly something that is urgent in some categories.
I agree, and I'd like to just shout out the team. We put together summer priorities, tasked various members with the team with different topics to be working on, so there'll be a variety of people taking leadership responsibilities throughout those 3 days. And I think we'll leave that very much on the same page to start the next school year. So I think it's really necessary for our team and really excited for that time together. And then finally, just wanted to share some future items that you're going to be hearing from us. So at the Academic Affairs meeting on Wednesday, we'll be looking at some preliminary 22-23, so this past school year assessment results. Look forward at future board meetings for us to be sharing PSSA scores, AP scores, Keystone scores, as we're in the season where we're starting to receive those results, so that will be coming. Mr. Moser and I are also working really hard with our curriculum leads right now to get our curriculum updated. So you're going to see over the next few months at academic affairs meetings and then at board meetings, curriculum brought before the board for approval. We are also in the process of reviewing and updating policies. So over next several months, you'll get first reads and second reads of policy updates. So that's some of our just sort of important summer work we're currently undergoing and things that you're going to see coming to you. And that's all I have for you today. Happy to answer any questions about any of those things.
Questions?
Question on the enrollment you mentioned on the kindergarten is currently off. Those are my words. When it comes to long-term forecasting and planning, do we have data or take a look at data to see if there are certain trends coming down the road? The demographics of the population. If we even look back a little historically, we say, hey, X amount % of all children or all students in this age group, 70% went to the public school system, X% went here. Now, with that one data point, I recognize it's one, we've seen it looks off. Is there data that will help us start to establish and get some foundation under us to say, hey, this trend's looking like it ain't going away. Birth rates are down. All those things start to kind of give you those senses of like, this is kind of giving me reason to be concerned, and getting out in front of that obviously would be.
No, I think that's a great point and a great question. Geisinger has done some regional studies of sort of birth rate, changing dynamics. And so I have that information, and there's nothing to indicate at this point in time that we're seeing a significant decline, that somehow we should get this 120 class instead of a 160 class. So we are looking at some of those longitudinal things. What I don't necessarily have that we need to start tracking as a district is the historical enrollment. Like, how many people wait till like, oh, school starts tomorrow, I better enroll my kindergartner. So I have a good sense of where we've been in previous kindergarten classes, but not previous kindergarten classes on July 10th. And so I genuinely have to be honest and say, I don't know if we should be worried right now, or I don't know if worried's the right, but like if we're on track for July 10th, because we don't really have a place where that's been documented. So I know what our August starting date of kindergarten classes has been historically, and we're lower than that. But I don't know if a lot of people historically have registered with a week to go
Understood.
before school starts.
And we have a sense that looking at it from more like a population base, like typically 65, and these are just numbers off the top of my head.
Sure. 70
to 72% over the last 5 years of the students available to enter into the public school system have entered, and now we're starting to see it's this year last year was 60, or next year and we start to see that trend line heading in the wrong direction. It would be reason to be like, oh, wait a minute. Think about
So we're
longer term
right.
vision,
No,
health
there's not a long-term concern right now in terms of population decline. In terms of the difference between kindergarten and first grade, we've historically seen about 10 kids that get added between kindergarten and first grade coming from St. Cyril's. So that's so St. Cyril's goes through kindergarten. So families that have their kids there in preschool, we do see a group of them continuing on to kindergarten and then coming to Danville for first grade. So that has been a trend. But that's the only sort of significant thing we've seen that's made kindergarten different than first, second, third, and so on historically.
Yeah, one thing, it's a great point, like you look for that pattern and a trend, but this past year's kindergarten class is actually one of our largest classes. So
yes.
Even if we're looking at a much lower enrollment for next year's kindergarten class, at that point in time, it's not yet a trend, but to your point, it certainly could be. So,
the last two, like the students going to first grade right now are 177, and the students going to second grade are 176. So we currently are just sitting much higher than that 138. And so where I just don't know is if that 177 last year on July 10th was at 138. Because I just don't specifically have that. But would just want to name and encourage if there are families out there who have a kindergartner and are just kind of like, oh, I wonder when I register. Like, now. Right. It's a great time to do that.
Yep, I appreciate that.
No, I think that's great insight.
Thank you. I appreciate the discussion, and one of the things I'd had listed here is at some point we probably should consider a long-term planning committee, again, that is one of the responsibilities of the board, along with policy development, evaluation of the superintendent, and a few other things. There was a feasibility study done here, Mr. Huron, about 2021. You did your study. I remember KCBA was the
I
architect.
remember yesterday.
Yeah.
They asked me a hard question. Yeah, I think so.
So it's about
that.
a couple
Yeah,
years.
2 years or so.
Yeah, and those things should be a working document, so we should actually continue to take a look at that, not with any preconceived notion we're going to do any projects of any type, but there should be a committee, and that is a responsibility, and we should respect the planning of the prior board. And I don't know if you're familiar with the company. It was a couple years ago, KCBA. I'm familiar with. They're a very good company. It
Yeah,
was a really nice
I
study that was
worked
done.
with them in my tenure here, so yeah, they
Okay.
seem solid. Right.
All right, so if anyone's interested in serving on such a committee, think about that for next month, and maybe we can appoint something. Okay. Anything else, Dr. Need?
That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Public comment, agenda items only. Anyone? Public comment. Presentations and outside guests.
None this
Nothing
evening.
tonight? Okay. School property and supplies, 6.1, payment app number 12, GR Nodo Electrical Construction Incorporated. Board will take action to approve payment application number 12 in the amount of $11,828.12 to GR Nodo Electrical Construction Incorporated for the Liberty Valley and Primary School construction projects as presented.
Motion.
Vognitz.
Second.
Ms. Cooper. Questions or comments? Barry?
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 6.2, payment application number 13, Myco Mechanical Incorporated. The board will take action to approve payment application number 13 in the amount of $92,687.20. Final payment to Myco Mechanical Incorporated for Liberty Valley / DPS renovations as presented. Get a motion.
So moved.
Mr. Clauser
Second.
and Mr. Vognetz. Any questions or comments? Gary?
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 6.3, invoice number 53309636165 to Siemens. The board will take action to approve the payment of invoice number 53309636165, the amount of $15,424.91 to Siemens for fire safety technology at Liberty Valley as presented. Motion to approve. Mr. Vognetz,
Second.
second Mrs. Cooper. Questions or comments? Terry, you're up. Go ahead.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 7.1, Athletics Hall of Fame. Board will take action to approve the initial bylaws. Did I skip one?
No.
No, okay. For the Danville Area School District Athletics Hall of Fame as presented. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Jerry, Mrs. Cooper?
I'll second.
Second, Ms. Heater. Anything, Dr. Need or Mr. Moser, and then we'll take questions or comments on this.
There was a lot of work, great feedback from the athletics committee, both from the committee board members, but also from the public at large. It's been the last 2 months, it has been kind of read through and edited. I did miss a couple of edits, but I did correct those, Mr. Vognetz. I did hit those in what is on the agenda tonight, but it's exciting. There's a lot of interest, obviously, from the community. It's a great endeavor. We just want to make sure that we're doing it in a manner that is, not only correct right now, but also sustainable as people come on and off of what will be the selection committee, and making sure that we have at least some level of criteria in place for how votes are being casted.
Dr. Need, Mr. Albertson, or Mr. Gump, anyone else have anything you want to add to what Mr. Moser said? Okay. Mrs. Cooper, anybody from your committee? Any other questions, comments? Anybody, anything? I think it's great to see it happening. I think the community takes great pride in its athletic programs now. They're incredible right now. Can't even count all the titles we've had this year, and we've had multiple years for swimming and football, and there are others too. I'm going to miss some if I start this, so
Cross-country,
don't start
track.
it.
Right.
Boys basketball, 2 out of 3 years. Yeah, no, it's been amazing. A couple
Yeah.
state champions, and but the history here is great too, and I know the community will really embrace this. So, any other questions or comments? All right, I think we're ready to vote. Go ahead, Terry.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 7.2, girls wrestling. The board will take action to add girls wrestling to Danville High School athletics as a PIAA sport beginning the 2023-2024 school year.
Motion.
Motion to approve, Mrs. Cooper. Second.
Second.
Mr. Vognetz, any questions or comments or
Yeah.
additional information?
What's the cost? What's the cost gonna be?
Cost of a coach, probably around $4,000, as it'll be around step one, $4,500 there. Obviously, some transportation for some events. We do not know yet if we'll be able to have a full schedule in terms of wrestling. Wrestling goes by points in terms of duels, tournaments, different levels of points throughout the season. But it is something that regionally there are more and more schools that are holding tournaments. Overall, it's hard to say with what that will cost. I would think somewhere in the $25,000 range in terms of all those things, because transportation is actually a huge cost for any sport. Anytime you fire up a bus, it's going to be $1,000 at least.
Just to give you a heads up, I'm gonna ask the same question for the very next one we're doing.
Sure.
All right. Anything else on girls wrestling, Mr. Albertson?
I think he might be a little high with that, but not arguing with Jason. But I think
I'm always going to come in high, Brian.
with the scheduling and talking
taking
to
a
some
couple
other
breaks.
ADs that have this,
Right.
what they're doing is doing more tournaments,
Right.
because the number of girls, if you have a dual meet, they may not get a match.
You have a lot of forfeits.
Their weights may not
Match
match
up.
up.
Yeah.
So if you go to some of these tournaments, it's, they're guaranteed individual
Makes
matches
a lot of sense,
throughout the
yeah.
day. There are some of those, I don't know some schools charge to enter.
Right.
Just a heads up.
What is the level of interest? How many did we have? I know when we talked volleyball, the number was extremely high. How is it for girls wrestling?
And the last time I checked it before we put it on the agenda, I think it was like 18,
Okay.
15, 18, somewhere right
And how many weight classes are there now? 13.
And even if we end up with lower numbers, one thing I would add, we talked about a co-op for boys lacrosse earlier. One thing I would add is there are probably girls in other districts who have not yet sanctioned this sport. That if we do not have a full roster, we could potentially co-op and honestly share some costs as well
Okay.
with some of those smaller districts in our surrounding area.
Okay.
And when it was presented to us at the athletic committee meeting, we currently have a elementary program now. that
Right.
would not have been in that survey.
Right. And the PIAA is now sanctioning.
Yes, they
Correct.
approved
Yes.
that
Once they went
about a
over
month
100, I saw
and a
that.
half ago.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
gonna be a state championship, everything.
Right.
Like that same weekend, districts and regionals would have a different day, because Williamsport can't I'm doing it at Hershey,
Mm-hmm.
same weekend
Okay.
as of right now, but that's not.
Okay. Any other comments, questions before we vote? Terry?
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 7.3, competitive cheerleading. The board will take action upon recommendation of the assistant superintendent to approve the competitive cheerleading team to participate in 3 events during the 2023-2024 school year at the following locations: Lewisburg, date to be determined in November. York, date to be determined in December. And Shamokin, District 4 competition. The district will assume registration and transportation costs associated with the events. Motion to approve.
Second.
Ms. Cooper, Dr. Green. Questions or comments or any additional information that needs to be provided?
What?
Probably about $300 for the 2 registration costs and then transportation to coincide. At the athletics committee meeting, one of the things we talked about was potentially looking at the usage of 2 vans as opposed to a bus, which would reduce our costs drastically and still provide the opportunity for the girls to go and compete in those things. Beyond that, there are no additional costs. We already pay advisors for the cheerleading squads.
Is this not something that's kind of growing? I mean, I
Yes.
don't want to So, right now, it's 3 events. We're sitting here, we're approving, this might be better pointed toward you, we're approving 3 events for our girls. Shouldn't this, how do I word this, be like, it's a sport, is it not?
There is a district and state championship. So I would think that probably down the road, yes, we would probably look at that. But even the schools who compete in this competitively at the district and state PIAA events, typically speaking, they, in my research, they don't do, it's not like they go to a competition every week. They do really kind of scale back, because what they do is they look to go to competitions in which they can, first of all, be competitive to kind of, and then have enough practice time in between, because it is an intense routine drill if you've never seen it. It is really gymnastics mixed with dance, mixed with cheerleading, very, very intense, and they will start in the summer. But they like to have a lot of practice time in between their events because of everything being so highly choreographed that they can kind of really mark their measurements in terms of improvement. Would they look to add more events in the future? I think that is going to be really gauged on the appetite and the desire of the girls and boys participating, because boys can participate as well.
We've approved the competitive cheer team, correct? We have the team in place.
We have a competitive team that is it's really the cheerleading, right? So it's one faction of that. We have not approved it as a varsity sport.
Okay. But, so this is our cheerleading team that's going?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm just wondering if this actually gets to the level where we had to approve it, because we don't approve the schedule for all the sports. If it's already approved and we've passed the budget.
It's because it's not this is treated more right now like a club, not a varsity sport. So
Right,
in that case, it's like almost like field trips, or some of those activities that clubs would ask to go on.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm going off the deep end. Forgive me, all I know about cheerleading is what I seen on Bring It On. That's it. But if this, I mean, is there interest in to make it a sport? Is the interest there?
That I cannot answer that question. Maybe Brian.
I don't know, and I'm kind of naive on the team, so that makes it even worse. The coach approached me last year about doing it, and it was too late last year. So then I told her I would bring it up again. So they've had tryouts, and they have their teams, the fall cheerleaders, and then the competitive team and the winter team are all done. They may not be all the same girls, because of girls playing other sports may not want to do the competitive cheer. And I think they have, I'm going to say 25 girls right now, not on competitive, but all together. And that number, don't take that as I'm guessing. So. Did I answer your question, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I really like that show. I like the guys. Be kind of nice if we had that sport, wouldn't it?
In the past, some of our girls have participated in co-ops with other schools as well for competitive cheerleading.
So I'm going to be a little bit of a devil's advocate on that. Is there a state champion, PIAA sanctioned state champion for this?
Yes.
Chip?
Yeah,
Ah,
sanction,
okay.
yeah. It is.
That's at Shamokin every year. There's no entry fee for that for that competition. It's just the one at York and the one at Lewisburg, I believe.
Yeah, and qualifying for the state would mean doing incredibly well at the district championship. So potentially they could go there. The additional cost there would then just be transportation to the state competition.
Any other questions, any more information on this item,
What?
7.3?
On that page, and why are we not recognizing it as a sport then?
That's kind of what I was getting at.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm with Mike on that. I mean, if there's PIAA sanctioned state champions and we got the interest, and I mean, obviously there is interest to do 3 events.
I think they want to see how things go with the coach.
Yeah, and before we take it any further, it's a good question, but the coach should be a part of the discussion.
Interest, see how they do in this first year in these 2 competitions is the correct way to go. And in speaking with Mr. Moser, that keeps the coach's salary down as well. Not that we want to do that, but you know, it's not a varsity sport on that tier system. It's that club.
I think that the difference there of making it, if we were to approve it as a sport, which I'm not opposed to at all, I think anytime we have the opportunity to do something that's sanctioned by PIAA, we should, is that then potentially locks them in every year. And if they go down this road a little bit and want to continue, then I think I wouldn't see any reason why we wouldn't be bringing this in the future.
I feel like it's that intermediary step between, like, it's been a club and they've just cheered for, like, football, basketball. They're interested in dipping their toes in the water for a competition. For a lot of our students, this will be their first time doing a competitive cheer squad. So these 3 events are like a stab at that, if you will.
So say they do well and they go into Shamokin and can, because it's not a sport here, can they go to states?
Yes.
Oh, they could go to states.
Even
We
though-
would vote on that as like another item to send them there if they qualified. So these are the 3 we're asking for now. But if they became district champs, if you will, they could definitely go on to states.
Anything else on this? Okay.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes?
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes.
Before we move off of athletics, can I just make one
Oh,
comment?
sure, yeah.
It's not directly, it's indirectly related to Danville. I just want to acknowledge the CSSC Phoenix team that went to the President's Cup, and one of the reasons I wanted to acknowledge them is because at least half the team is Danville middle school girls.
Mm-hmm.
And though I didn't see any of the games, from the reporting that I've seen from the parents that are there, they actually did pretty well, and they're ranked top 8 in the country.
Wow,
So the
great.
future is bright for Danville girls soccer as things sort of move forward. So I just wanted to put that acknowledgement out there. That's a pretty amazing thing for a little town like Danville to send a team to a national championship,
great,
effectively.
yeah.
So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you. Okay, anything else? 8.1, revision, Danville student to attend Central Columbia 339 program. The board will take action to approve the revision for Danville student number 110396 to attend the Central Columbia 339 program, Communications Technology / Technicians in Support Services 10.9999. Beginning the, 2023-24 school year, Danville Area School District will pay the tuition to Central Columbia School District. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Got a motion, get a second. Second, Ms. Cooper. Questions, comments on the 339?
This is something we voted on last month, and Central apologized. They just gave us the wrong code for the student. So it's the same student we voted on last month, just different program, but not extra tuition, if that makes sense.
Okay. Any questions, comments on this? Terry?
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yes.
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 10.1 is the June 23 finance reports. And no action there, right? Excuse me. 10.2, June 2023 cash receipts, no action necessary. And then 10.3, bills for payment, June 7th through July 6th. The board will take action to approve the bills for payment for June 7th, 2023 through July 6th, 2023 as presented. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Motion.
Second.
Dr. Green, second. Questions or comments on the bills? Terry?
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yes.
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 10.4, school-based access program. The board will take action upon the recommendation of the business manager to ratify the 23-24 PA access program as BAP agreement for participation in the access program. Motion to approve.
I motion.
Second.
Second.
Second, Mrs. Cooper. Questions or comments? Can we get a quick explanation on what the access program is from someone? I know Melissa's not here, but
Sure, access allows us to, our participation allows us to bill out some functions of services that we provide for students, oftentimes students with disabilities,
right.
to get a reimbursement cost back through that program. This is sort of a re-up of
We do
our
this-
participation. This is
this is
normal,
ongoing.
normal
Normal
practicing
practice.
procedure that would come up every year.
that's why I'm nodding. Yeah, we do want
Yeah.
to get a motion. in a
We do
second.
want this.
Yes.
They just give us money,
Yes.
right? Okay. Any questions, comments on the access program? All right, Terry?
Dr. Faulkner.
Yes.
Dr. Green.
Yes.
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 10.5, PSEA dental and vision benefits. The board will take action to ratify the agreement with the PSEA Health and Welfare Fund to provide dental and vision benefits to the district employees effective July 1st, 2023, retroactively. Motion to approve. I added the last word.
Motion.
We got two?
Second.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Okay. Terry, go ahead.
Dr. Green.
Yes.
Mrs. Heater.
Yes.
Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mr. Clauser.
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper. Dr. Faulkner.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 10.6, utility consultant. The board will take action upon recommendation of the business manager to approve administration to execute the attached document that authorizes Provident Energy Consulting LLC as our representative for negotiating any district electricity and or natural gas supply agreements. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Questions, comments? Mike Sokolowski is not here. He's on vacation.
Do an explanation, brief explanation?
If you could do it quickly.
Yeah. I'll take my best stab at it.
Yeah.
So essentially, we agree to work with Provident Energy. They go out, what they do is they try to get multiple schools so that when they are bidding and negotiating prices for utilities, they get the best rate for us. In exchange, we pay a certain fraction of anything that our bill is to them then as like basically as a finder's fee for them to go out and actually do the legwork of negotiating that. Their negotiating power is stronger than in individual districts because they're pulling together very, up to potentially many school districts in the region.
Right.
So,
Okay. Okay. Any other questions or comments about utilizing Provident Energy in this position?
Have we done this before?
I don't know that we have. I know districts that do. I know they go out and negotiate.
Concept makes sense. I just
Yeah.
don't know if we
I
have
don't,
experience
I
don't
do
in
not
believe
it.
believe
so.
we have been, at least in the recent years. I couldn't tell you about going back further, but this is something that certainly Mr. Sokolowski did at his prior district as
Yeah.
well, so.
I know at least one district in this region that does that. I don't want to throw the name of that district out but I do know there's one about 20 minutes south of here that does. 40 minutes. Other than
So
that,
we don't pay, I know I'm putting you on the spot, I don't mean it in that context, but we don't value to the consultant is to generate this business that puts the collaborative group in a better position to get rates, and then in that structure, then they will take some of that.
Of course, they're going to
Money.
get a profit,
Yeah.
yes.
That's
I
exactly.
just wonder what our
Yeah.
exposures are, you know, we paying them X dollars, and then it may or may not work out, you know, does that change the discussion? You know, we talking a few thousand, we talking 50,000? Magnitude kind of thing. I don't know enough.
I don't know the answer to that, Mr. Huron. It's a good question. I do know that the district that I know of that does this has been with them for quite a few years, and they've consistently,
So that reflects. it
they've
must
made
be
money,
working.
and the company has made money. They try to make a lot, and you pay them part of that, and then they take the rest.
Right.
I can't
Which
give
is
you
a win-win
specifics,
for
though.
everybody, makes sense. I
Yeah.
just don't know how that fits.
Yeah, and the way most of these agreements are written, you can't lose. You can only, we did one at Berwick when I was there, not with Provident, though. We had an agreement like that also. You pay them a percentage.
So the financial exposure sounds like we're talking.
You just pay a percentage of the savings if there's no
So
savings.
there's a strong upside, and it doesn't sound like there's a big, if any, downside.
It looks like for what we would be paying, this agreement is basically let me make this 1/10 of 1 cent per kilowatt per hour for electric. I think I got that right. And it looks like 10 cents for every DTH of natural gas. I have no idea what that actually means. But that is the actual, basically their service fee.
Any other questions or comments? Are we ready to vote on this, or is this something we want to defer until Mike's here?
I'd like to ask that we make a motion, that we just table it, because it sounds good, we're talking from
Yeah.
theory, I have a perspective, but I think it would be diligence to get a little more substance to be sure what we're signing. Personally.
What's the will of the
vote yes.
group? I'm not real strong either way on this, because I see your point, and it is something that's new to the
Kind of
district.
blind right now, right?
Well, it's
Like,
something
and is
that's
it
new to the
necessary prove
district.
Tonight. Like,
Yeah,
Is it gonna hurt anything to wait till next month?
Mike asked for it to be on this month, but without him here, I don't know if there's a deadline that caused that
Yeah,
ask.
I don't think there's a deadline that we would have it. The only fear I would have is if there was some lock-in rate at some point, but I don't think we're at that point right now. I haven't heard of anything like that.
well, I think it's new to the district, and the person that's proposing it isn't here.
Yeah.
Sure.
So for that reason, I'm fine with seconding a motion to table, but Jennifer, are you there? We already have a motion and a second. We have a motion and a second. Do we need to follow through on that, or can we take a motion to table now? And, I want to hear from everybody.
Yes, you can take a motion to table now.
Okay, and that may fail too, but we can try it. Do you want to make the motion to table,
Sure.
Chris?
I make a motion to table item 10.6 utility consultant.
I'll second. Any questions or comments about the motion to table? I'll make one comment. I think in the end, this is going to be a good thing to do. I would certainly be much more comfortable if Mike were sitting here explaining it than all of us trying to.
Kind of blind.
We're kind of groping
I
in the
don't
cave.
know what those things mean.
We're sure he's gonna be here next.
Yeah, he's on
Yeah, he's
vacation.
on vacation.
He's on vacation this
today.
week.
Yeah, yeah, and I know he has a good handle on it, and I know it's done. Providence used by other districts, but that's how I feel anyway. So any other comments or questions before we vote on the motion to table? Barry, I guess you're up.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes.
Thank you.
10.7, Tax Audit Services Agreement. The board will take action to approve the agreement between the Danville Area School District and Wagner, Dries, Elasser, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, and Associates, PC, to perform real estate tax audit services in the amount not to exceed $6,800 for the year ending December 31st, 2022, as presented. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Got a second from Dr. Green. Any questions or comments? I will ask, is Still the same company we've been using. Come across so many of them. We've used them, right, I believe.
I don't believe that, I have not had any conversations with Mike that this would
About
be a
it
new
being new.
direction.
Yeah, we've,
Right.
a lot of districts in this region use this company.
Yeah.
And I think they're the same one. Okay. Any comments, questions? Terry?
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 11.1, personnel consent items. The board will take action to approve personnel items 11.2, 11.3, 11.4, 11.5, 11.6, 11.7, 11.8, 11.9. Board members have the option to remove any item or items from the personnel consent items for discussion or to be voted on individually. 2. Okay.
Yes, for a motion?
Anything? Anything that you would like removed? Anyone? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve? The board will take action to approve personnel items 11.2 through 11.9 inclusive.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second. Questions or comments on any of these? You want to explain? I saw you motion.
Yeah, one that I really want to, 11.9, school physician.
Good.
This is something that Dr. Sarah Marks, on behalf of the district, she has been providing this service to the district for a number of years. It has actually just never been approved to the best of our knowledge or ability to hunt those things down. It is important that we do approve a school physician, not only for the district, but also for the individual or health company as well. But I just want to thank Dr. Marks for providing this service literally at no cost to the district. That's
Definitely. Thank
tremendous.
She's an amazing physician and an amazing person.
you. Yeah.
She is.
I
No,
second that.
We're really
100%
lucky.
agree.
Okay. Any other questions, comments on this? Ready to vote? Terry? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I missed 11.8 and 11.9 on the bottom there. but-
Okay.
The mental health specialist. So when I opened that up and I started reading the actual description, can you, what is the difference between this and a good guidance counselor? Tell me what the difference is.
So a guidance counselor's training would be around things like career development, and there are actually like guidance and career standards through the Pennsylvania Department of Education. They would also be able to facilitate sessions with individuals or groups around things like friendship making skills. And I don't know necessarily want to use the word lower level, that sounds bad, but they are not certified to provide therapy to students. And so we have students in our middle school and our high school who are coming to us with really significant needs, like suicidal ideation. And there are not, one of the things the Mental Health Task Force presented is that there's great community partners, but there's a lack of availability slots for therapy in our region. So this person could actually provide counseling services to someone. So a student could come in, they could talk about issues of depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, and have a true therapy session with someone who is a licensed professional counselor.
I'm going to throw some more at you here.
Okay.
What is stopping, or what does it take, what qualifications do you have to have, or what education do you have to be certified as a guidance counselor? In other words, do you have to be a teacher for 4 years before you can become a guidance counselor?
You do not.
You do not.
Or
No.
can you be a mental health specialist and certified also as a guidance counselor?
You could be.
Yes. You
Yes,
could have both
You could be both,
certifications.
but
You're
they
generally
are
not.
both. They are both in and of themselves professional degrees. So it would be, it would almost be like a double, the idea of a double major, where you work towards a degree of being a school counselor. An educational specialist is oftentimes one of the, it's considered that. So the teaching degree is not actually a teaching degree in the sense of what a lot of teachers get. It is an educational specialist with concentration in school counseling certification, where a mental health specialist, that could be a completely different career track. They could also then honestly get their master's in education and probably test in to being a school counselor, taking that path.
But we have a more than enough demand for someone to do a single one of those jobs as opposed to combining them. And one of the points of this, and one of the things that was very enlightening participating in the mental health task force, and actually, to be frank, some of my conversations with Dr. Need and Dr. Faulkner, is that the thing that we're lacking currently in district and that we need more of is people that are actually able to not provide guidance, but to provide actual counseling in people who have mental issues. And so people at the lower levels are not actually qualified to do that. And so sort of the minimum standard from my understanding would be a social worker.
So we're looking for someone in this job description. You'll specifically see that we're looking for a licensed professional counselor or a licensed clinical social worker. That would mean they have specific training in counseling or therapy as opposed to the guidance counseling degree. You are right that someone could possess both of those, but that would be sort of like, again, like Mr. Moser said, being a double major or dually certified.
I think it's important to note too that, you know, this particular position would have naturally and organically a much smaller caseload than a traditional school counselor. But by honestly having an individual or several individuals that fit this job description, we would be increasing the capacity of all of our counselors to provide services to all of our students, even if they're not seeing this person, because having somebody who is the go-to for mental health needs will help to free up our school counselors who at times are spending time trying to work through some of those issues and concerns. And so therefore, your school counselor, you know, ASCA is the American School Counselor Association, recommends a ratio of 250 students to 1. And that's their professional organization, the gold standard. If you have that, which we do currently in the high school at the very least, have that ratio, we should be able to provide exemplary indirect and direct school counseling services. Unfortunately, in society right now, what we see is sort of at times counselors, school counselors in all districts, not just, this is not unique to Danville, becoming overwhelmed with the number of mental health needs they're trying to support at the same time as working with the kids who have no specific mental health needs but need help applying for colleges.
All right, you know I'm coming with this, but I agree. I think we need a position like this. I'm not arguing that at all. But if we hire somebody with this specific experience, this is their profession, why can't we let a guidance counselor go then? Because we're alleviating those duties from those guidance counselors by hiring somebody like this.
So no,
And I say let them go, I mean attrition, obviously, but I just don't understand why.
We currently, for example, at the high school, we have guidance counselors who are teaching a course called GPS to our 9th graders. So it's like a transition course for coming to 9th grade. We have guidance counselors who have to cancel those classes when a crisis occurs in the guidance office. And so then those students are just placed with like a substitute for more like a study hall, because if a student is experiencing suicidal ideation, that, you know, bumps having class. But our guidance counselors should be having class. So I think what Mr. Moser was trying to express was really our guidance counselors right now are not able to always do the actual guidance work they should do because they get sucked into these therapeutic crises. Because there's just students are experiencing more trauma than maybe we've ever seen in history.
But
It's
if
a
we
fundamental-
if we hire this person, they won't be getting sucked in because this person will be dealing with
Which means they can do their job.
Which means they can do the job that they haven't been able to
But
do.
how many guidance counselors do we have now?
We would certainly look with attrition to see if our ratio is off anywhere, but the ratio is 250 to 1, and we're not far off of that. Like, we're maybe up a guidance counselor as a district.
The ratio comes from an advocacy group.
That's
I think
a
we always
gold
have to be
standard
careful
in
of
their
that.
professional
Sure.
organization.
Yeah,
There are
because there's a lot of
districts-
professional organizations out there
Yes.
that put
My point
ratios
is
out.
that we should be able to deliver exemplary services,
Right.
having a ratio below that.
Right, yeah. Dr. Green, you had a.
So, Mr.
comment.
Klausner, unfortunately, the Mental Health Task Force actually presented last time, and I know you had good reason not to be here, but one of the things that they pointed out was that, and one of the things I agree with aggressively, is that the goal should have someone who's capable of doing this at every single one, or at least at the higher levels, which we do not currently have, because the people who are actually capable of doing these kind of duties, meaning the actual counseling for people with mental health crises, are overtapped and can't see all the kids that need to be seen. And so this is a fundamental different level of service than the regular guidance counselors are providing. Because in the past, this district has asked guidance counselors to provide this level of service even though they are not qualified to do so and not capable of actually providing this service. So this is righting a wrong that's happened in this district for quite a bit of time and will allow us to now provide a service to kids that formerly either were getting insufficient service or weren't getting the service at all. And so it's not a one-to-one, meaning it's freeing up someone who should be doing a different kind of flavor of job to actually do their job. So it doesn't mean they can go away. It means that they're actually going to be able to do the things that they're supposed to be doing instead of trying to do something that's above the scope of their actual practice. So it'd be like asking me, who's a cardiologist, to go perform orthopedic surgery. You don't want me doing that. You want someone who's an actual orthopedic surgeon to be performing the surgery.
And I understand you. I agree with that. But when we bring this person aboard, I mean, it's always been a little contention that we have maybe one or two more guidance counselors than we actually need.
Yeah, that question wasn't answered.
I would think that when obviously in line with what we're doing with all staffing positions, we would look at if we have a resignation or retirement, we would look at what do we need to provide the services that our students need. And if we could do it with one less at that point in time, I think that Dr. Nita and I would both be behind that recommendation at that point in time. We're not there right now. We don't have anybody resigning or retiring. So we're asking for this position in addition to right now, believing that we can absorb the cost without increasing the actual budget that was passed at all within the scope of that budget. And then down the road, probably continue to pay for that position by looking at, yes, a reallocation of a position from somewhere else.
What are we thinking about for a salary for somebody with these qualifications?
They would come in on the collective bargaining agreement at the teacher's salary.
What's Dr. Faulkner, if you don't mind, are these people out there looking to come into public schools? Is there a supply of people that we're going to be looking at, or is it going to be hard to fill this position?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think that I can tell you this, that there's always a demand for these folks, and for licensed clinical social workers and LPCs, people are, it's a much higher volume of degree program like that these programs produce versus like more specialized, like as a psychologist, psychiatrist, there's a smaller number of those folks. So there are a lot more degree programs. I would imagine that we would be able to fill it.
Is a collective bargaining unit competitive for somebody? I have no idea what they would make. Is it a competitive salary for somebody with the credentials?
We currently have a licensed clinical social worker at the high school and at Liberty Valley and have been with the district for a good while. And so I think they would feel like it's competitive in their field.
One thing I think it's important to distinguish is I don't want the public to get the impression that by us hiring a clinical counselor, a licensed professional counselor, or a clinical social worker, that means that we would be booting out a school counselor. If that were to happen, it would be for reasons unrelated to hiring the clinical social worker.
They're
Because
two
they're
issues.
different. They're literally different jobs.
They are.
Right.
And so I want to make that very clear with the public, right? Hiring a mental health specialist is not come at the expense of people who already work here, because it's a different job, and it's one where there is demand and need that has been unmet.
Questions or comments? I do have one more thing. Knowing that we have these needs that are pressing upon us, and we've stated that we'd like to have one at every building, which we're not going to have, and I'm not saying we should do this here, wouldn't it kind of behoove the colleges and universities to start to have their guidance counselors get more training in the type of things that would be more practical than the training they're actually offering now to counselors, knowing how eager colleges and universities are to change things? You know, they love that.
Yes.
I think yes.
So that was sarcasm. But would that not make some sense, at least, that we should
Absolutely.
At request.
Well, I think that there is awareness of the need and demand, and there are some partnerships in the community between like the community and Geisinger and the CSIU and even Commonwealth University, where they're talking about how do we figure this out. I know that Commonwealth, I guess now has a social work program, and they're starting to explore, can we turn this into a clinical social work program? And there are some other universities, and even, I think again, this is a very preliminary conversations, but, can Geisinger leverage some of the work that they have with the School of Medicine to build training programs? Again, we're all trying to, I think everybody's trying to figure out how to meet this
Do it
need.
better.
Those conversations are happening.
Good.
Okay. I can't say this, Geisinger will have this by then, or Bloom U will have this by then, right? We can't say that yet, but there's definitely a lot of awareness of the need of increasing the training programs. The challenge, I think, with the school counselor is that they are, to be very clear, highly qualified and have been doing excellent work in this district and other districts for a long time, and have been asked to carry a massive, my mom was a high school counselor. She carried a massive burden, and they're incredible professionals.
Yeah.
But what they specialize in is different and unique. And to Mr. Moser's point, it would be the equivalent of me going and getting 2 PhDs, right? Like they're very different degree tracks and programs. There is overlap, in a sense, but at some point, I don't know the history of counseling, there was a divergence about a school counselor and a licensed professional counselor because of the unique skill sets that are required and the training are required.
Okay. Anything else before we vote? Okay, and we have not pulled that out, so that'd be part of the consent, I believe, right? Okay, all right, we're ready to vote. Terry?
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 11.10, curriculum leads. The board will take action to approve the curriculum leads for the 23-24 school year as presented. Motion to approve?
Motion.
I second, but can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Do you have positions for those unfilled, or are they all filled?
They are not all filled. We do still have some unfilled. Some of them we've had, a few of them we have had multiple candidates who have expressed interest, and so therefore we need to conduct interviews for those positions, because that is, the kind of fair way to do it. Dr. Needs and I's schedule have not necessarily matched up over the past couple of weeks, so we're looking to get that done certainly next week, and for approval in August, we would have them all filled.
Any other questions or comments on the curriculum leads? Okay, Terry, we can do a vote.
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 11.11, the board will take action to approve the extracurricular advisors for the 23-24 school year as presented. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Mr. Clauser,
Second.
Dr. Green, any questions or comments?
There was an approval of advisors last month. There's just a few additional ones that weren't finalized by last month.
Okay, Terry?
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz.
Yes.
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 11.12, hire Danville Primary School Principal. The board will take action to approve the employment of Megan Geis as primary school principal at a starting yearly salary of $91,000 with Act 93 benefits effective July 11, 2023. Motion to approve.
I
So
motion.
moved.
Mrs. Heater and Mr.
We're
Huron.
fighting over the motion.
First,
Sorry,
second.
can't help it.
I too motion.
Any questions or comments about the hiring of a new principal?
I would just like to thank Megan for being with us this evening, and she's been a very talented second grade teacher for us, a leader in the district, and we're just beyond excited for her to move into this role. So thank you for being here tonight, and I'm really excited to work with you in this capacity.
We should probably vote first, but yeah.
Sorry. Yes, you have to vote first. Sorry, Megan.
Terry? Terry, go ahead.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
I guess you
Dr.
have to
Green.
say yes now.
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Absolutely.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Klauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. Congratulations, Megan.
Welcome now,
Thank you.
Megan. Sorry, I
Dr.
got
Mead, go
I
ahead.
got ahead of myself.
We're happy for you. Okay. Hire Liberty Valley Principal. The board will take action to approve the employment of Heaven Reinert as Liberty Valley Principal at a starting salary of $93,000 with Act 93 benefits effective upon release from her current employment. Motion to approve.
I motion.
Cedar. Second.
Second.
Mr. Huron. Questions or comments?
I'll wait till after the vote.
Okay. Terry?
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Klauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes.
Heaven is also with us this evening, and very excited to start working with Heaven and have her join our administrative team as well. So thank you for being here, and we're super excited to have you in the Danville family.
Congratulations. Congratulations to both of you. 11.14, new hire, golf coach. The board will take action to approve Sean Duffy as head golf coach for the 2023-2024 school year with a stipend of $2,250. Step 1, 9-week season. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Second?
Any questions or comments about prospective golf coach? Gary?
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Klauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 11.15, substitute pay. The board will take action to approve the substitute pay rate increase as presented. Motion to approve.
Motion?
Dr. Green?
I second.
Second, Mrs. Heater. Any questions or comments about the substitute pay increase? Dr. Green, you
I just want to say it's a raise to in line with other districts in the IU,
Mhm.
that we were paying less than others. And so in order to, in line with the teacher contract and our support staff contract, we want to pay people what's fair and is in line for what the competitive market bears. And so I think this is an appropriate thing for us to do. And I appreciate the board being willing to do it.
sounds good. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Terry?
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Klauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 12.1, the HIPAA resolution. The board will take action to approve the HIPAA resolution as presented.
Motion.
Motion second.
I'll second.
Questions or comments about the HIPAA resolution? Terry, go ahead.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Klauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 12.2, safety net. The board will take action to approve the letter of agreement between Danville Area School District and Safety Net Counseling Incorporated for intensive behavioral health services for the 23-24 school year as presented. A motion to approve.
Motion.
Motion second.
Second.
Okay. Questions or comments?
This is a relationship agreement, so should we need services, not an amount that we definitely owe.
So we pay as we go with it.
Yes.
Okay.
Can you just briefly explain what they?
So that would be for students that require some, in their IEP, like some significant counseling services, and sometimes it's paired with a student that might need to go to an out-of-district placement. And so they would provide like intensive behavior therapy, things like that, for a student with a particular need in that area. And so this is a relationship agreement that we can work with them, but if it's not a particular amount, we're not saying Susie Smith gets the service or something like that. This is just a relationship agreement but with them. In case we have a student that would need those services, we would be set to go to begin those quickly.
So is this similar to like News Story?
So News Story is a specific school that we
Right.
can send students to. This is a counseling service that could be paired with like a News Story placement. or a student could receive that's still in Danville. So this would be like an outside service, not necessarily their ed placement. But it is a service that could be paired with a placement.
It essentially boils down to it's a higher level of care, right? So
Right.
it's like a kid who has very intensive needs. They may have someone who comes to the house, who's available for
Yeah,
crisis calls.
It's
who's like,
THS,
yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
TSS.
So it's a higher dose of therapy that may be required for really intensive situations.
And so this allows us to reach out to that organization when a case arises, rather than get board approval, then get services for a kid.
So, Harry, I'm beating a dead horse.
Or
Would this be something that the mental health hire would be able to help alleviate? Would that be in that job description, in that?
it is possible. It would depend on that student's specific needs, but it is possible. I can't guarantee it because this is sort of unique to, this would be more reserved for a student with an IEP need is how we would end up here.
Thank you.
And more than likely, not 100%, but when we voted on the access item before, a lot of these things do have some insurance coverage to them, and so there's some money that comes back. We have to pay out for these services, but we do receive some of that funding back when we pay for healthcare items like this for students.
Terry?
Mr. Clauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Dr. Faulkner,
Yes.
Dr. Green,
Yes.
Mrs. Heater,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Vognetz,
Yes.
Mr. Brookhart.
Yes. 13, transportation, nothing there. Okay, board concerns and items for next meeting agenda. 14.1, anybody, anything that you would like to bring up? Lacrosse co-op, is that going to come out in the committee? You were talking about Warrior Run and us. Is that something we're going to possibly see as an item, or is that going to go back to the committee? That was the only thing I thought was pending.
Item.
You think it'll be on next time for approval? Okay. Okay. Not holding you to it. I just wanted to know what to anticipate. Anything else you want to bring up? Anyone from the board for next month?
I've made a note that the healthcare committee would be dissolved and that we'd be looking at a long-term planning committee.
Okay. Could you keep the
Committee
board?
items.
Could you also keep the board or Mike updated on where the state budget is? Because I know there's some
Yes.
ramifications for that when our allocations are received.
Yep.
All right.
We'll
Appreciate
stay
it.
on top of that.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else from anybody on the board? Okay. Public comment? Sir?
Is that mic on, or do you need to cut it?
If you push the
Push the button.
forward right there. There you go. That's it.
Good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Tom Height, a locally employed at Frosty Valley Resort here in Danville. I'm a golf course superintendent. 4 days ago, I reported a physical and mental health abuse by Danville High School football coaches, and I've yet to receive a phone call about it, so I'm pretty upset. I employ 7 high school young men, 5 of which are on this football team. And some of the conversations I had with them last week were troubling. So I obviously sent an email. I wasn't sure who to direct it to, so I sent it to all of you. The follow-up is what really bothers me. I just sat here and listened to endless mental health counselors, hiring companies, everything. And I have yet to receive some kind of follow-up about this. And it's mind-blowing to me, especially with all of the history here and just listening to all of this evening. I'm not sure what your policy is when it comes to execution, follow-up, but I feel there's a lot of work to be done right now. And especially when children and youth have been involved due to a physical altercation, I didn't expect an email back from all of you. I appreciate the response I got from Mr. Gump to let me know Mr. Moser was, I don't know if you're heading it, taking the lead on it. And I think that's part of my concern too, is I don't have any direction on where to go with this. Mr. Moser got back to me, asked me specifically if I could give him students, and I gave him one that I knew that was involved with the physical side. Dr. Faulkner, you got a response back to me, I appreciate it, but I think that's part of the problem right now too. Maybe it's just with me, but I had no clear direction and got no clear response. It just, to me as an employer who oversees young men and women on my crew, what would I have done in that situation if a parent reached out to me? Maybe you're confident you guys have all the information. To me, that would be a bit arrogant because I offered quite a bit of information and no one bothered to call me and follow up. The timing of this is odd because I just spent all weekend updating my coaching certificates for youth soccer. That involved obviously concussions, but physical and mental health, how to report abuse, and what to do. And this weekend, to not have a legitimate conversation with anyone on a follow-up was extremely disappointing. I know there are parents who have asked me what the response has been, and I said, quite frankly, not very good. And others, I can't speak for everyone, and I also know that the verbal side of this reporting has a lot of variables. And to that I can't speak of, but I can speak of to what I've heard 5 to 7 young men talk about last week. And if half of it's true, it's not very good. So I come to you tonight looking for some answers on behalf of myself as a leader with managing young men, as a parent, and I hope that whether it's a policy update, procedural update, something, the fact that I haven't had a follow-up is very concerning. So I'll leave you with that. I have given my email and phone number to all of you, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming in. First of all, I apologize for not getting back to you. I've been away. I just literally saw this right before we walked into the meeting. And that's not an excuse. That's just,
Yeah, I sent it last week.
vacation, so, excuse me?
I sent it last week.
Yeah, no, I know. I was away, but go ahead.
You do understand that personnel issues, it's against state law in order to discuss it publicly, and that, you know, even though, and I'm someone who voted no on the coach, so I'm just telling you from that perspective, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong surrounding this, but you can't make the assumption once you report something that you have any right in order to hear anything back, because HR issues by Pennsylvania state law are private. So that means unless there's public action taken, you will not necessarily receive a direct response.
Okay.
And any response you receive from the board, the one, in HR-related issues, we don't know anything until it's brought to the board. Mm-hmm. Meaning our job is to be judge and jury, and that until the administration has conducted its investigation, we don't know anything about what's ongoing, except for the rumors and other things that are going on.
Sure.
And so our job in that position is to remain neutral until the evidence is presented to us. So you cannot make any assumptions about where the process is based on the response that's given to you. Now, oftentimes individual board members will respond. Frequently I do, frequently others do. And that's because we care intensely about the community and we want you to know that you're heard. So from our perspective, and I'm only going to speak for myself, I'm not going to speak
No,
for
that's
the rest of
okay. You're putting it exactly right.
From my perspective, when something is sent to us, I want to let you know you're heard. In your case, I didn't respond because I knew others were responding, so
Sure.
you knew,
No,
you knew
I
that you
understand
were heard.
that. Yep.
And I know you personally, and
Yep.
so I didn't want to make...
No, and I understand that, and I understand obviously the seriousness of it and your as board members or whomever, superintendent, it doesn't matter. I understand that you can't get into details, or if there is an opportunity down the road to do that, it's not through email response to me.
But it's beyond that. We literally are legally not allowed to say anything until action is taken.
Okay,
And
well,
to
then
follow
why
up with
not
what-
someone
Go ahead.
get back to me and explain that, where I'm left with a lot of questions and no direction.
The follow-up to what I was saying, if we had responded, it would have been generic. Just
And
as
that's
Dr.
okay.
Green said, we would not have said anything specific about it
And that's
anyway. We
okay,
can't.
but when I have parents asking me what's the next step, or what can we do, or what can we expect?
But HR issues they cannot
Right.
legally work that way.
I would encourage those parents to reach out to us.
They should be calling here.
Right.
Right, not to you.
Right.
I would.
I appreciate the fact that you're
The fact that I
concerned.
oversee these young men for 5-6 months out of the year,
Right.
and they're under my guidance
Mhm.
and leadership. And the conversations that were being had in the mornings, it started as overhearing it, and then
Right.
then I had to. I felt the need to ask questions and get involved.
Sure, understood.
First, I'd just like to commend you as a leader in the community and as a volunteer coach. I wear that hat as volunteer coach too. I'd just like to commend you for caring enough about your kids to reach out to us. So thank you. And I apologize on behalf of district administrative staff if we didn't get back in an appropriate way to communicate that we kind of can't get back to you, similar to what Dr. Green's saying. Mr. Moser is conducting a very thorough investigation into anything that's brought to us and is meeting with students and parents. And so if there are students and student athletes and parents out there that have a concern, we would ask that they please bring that to us.
Right.
We can't interview people in terms of an investigation who've just overheard things, if that makes
Sure,
sense.
I
So we have to go right to that source.
I understand
But we
that.
are certainly taking anything that we're receiving very seriously. And also similar to what Dr. Green said, we just can't go back and say, here's what we're doing about it, because it is a personnel matter.
But at the same time, I also just felt that maybe the best generic response was from Dr. Faulkner in that he just explained care for the situation.
Sure.
But looking to you all as leaders and kind of, I guess, for a direction on it. And maybe I expected too much
No, I
on
think
how I would have handled it, but
I think what you're asking for wasn't necessarily too much and just a more respectful response. And so I apologize if you didn't get that. I can just clarify that we can never sort of fully satisfy someone who's maybe heard a rumor or heard a conversation, because we can't get back and say
Right.
this is the exact step we're taking.
I understand that, but my whole reason is I was the one reporting it. I felt there maybe would be handled slightly different as someone who was actually reporting it and not overhearing it, like took the time to talk with these
Right,
boys.
and I think that's why Mr. Moser asked you about names, because in our investigation, we'd need to go right to that young man and his family that
Right.
experienced it, as opposed to you that heard it in conversation,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yep.
And so I think that's where he was getting at in terms of names.
And for further on, like any information that we get as a board, like if you emailed us as a board total, we are to pass
going to
it
them.
on to Molly or Jason as
Okay.
assistant
Right.
super.
Well, knowing it was
And
the
knowing-
summer and people are on vacations, I didn't know where to go with it, so
And-
sorry you all got it.
No,
And-
we
No, no,
appreciate
that's
it.
okay.
That's
No,
totally
no, that's
appropriate.
fine.
We appreciate it.
And knowing that Mr. Moser did respond back to you, that's why you did not personally get an email from me.
Yeah, and I included that in my discussion here tonight. I didn't expect one from everyone, and knowing this, how sensitive it is, wouldn't expect one. But I just maybe felt a little bit lost with having some kind of formal response. I guess is maybe the best way to put it.
Well, there has to be a degree of trust in the administration. I mean, there are legally binding things that they have to do when a report of this comes to their attention. And so I know we're frequently dissatisfied with the way personnel issues feel. Because what often happens is we want to hear what the response is, but we don't hear much. And I get that. And that's what a lot of what it sounds like you're expressing. But you have to understand the privacy of the individuals being investigated also has to be respected.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just think of if the situation was different and you were accused of something and no one knew whether it was true or false. We can't publicly come out and say, hey, guess what? X is accused of this, and this is what's currently happening. And so the reason the laws exist in PA and the reason the board is held separate from these investigations is that, you know, we have to respect all parties involved. The investigation has to be appropriate and thorough. And then the jury, in the end, has to be neutral. And so you also have to understand we can't investigate as a board ourselves either.
Yep.
We have to stay out of it as much as possible, because when it comes before us, we have to be fair to all parties involved. And this is an emotional issue. It's clearly an emotional issue for a lot. It's actually one of the reasons I voted the way that I did when it came up, because there was clearly tension in the community. But you have to understand and trust that our current administration will investigate these things as thoroughly as
Yep.
possible.
No, I do. I think maybe I was just looking for a different response. Didn't get it, became more concerned, and that's why I'm here.
Well, we appreciate that, because it shows that you clearly care about the community, you care about the kids. And, you know, we want people in the community to actually care about our kids and to do something. I mean, that's why programs like See Something, Say Something exist.
Yeah.
Yep.
Safe to say.
And I think I would always encourage people of the public to reach out to us if they have issues, because even if we cannot say this is exactly what's happening right here, right now, we will make sure that the message gets to the place that it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate your willingness to do that. It does come from a very clear, genuine place of caring for these kids. I think that I'm sitting here thinking about my reply, and when I've replied to these things before, I have sort of talked about like the barriers that exist. And I think it's on us to do that, right? You guys, as members of the public, are not always going to understand the rules, the policies, the procedures, the distinction between those places. But you're sitting on information about kids that you care about, and you're watching, feeling like nothing is happening.
Right.
It's a tough place to be in, like especially when you love and care for these kids.
Yep.
So I think we do have an obligation to explain, even though we can't say this is exactly what we're doing, this is why we can't say it, so
Correct.
that the public knows.
We appreciate your bravery. It takes a lot to get up and talk in front of this group. I've done it
I've
before.
been around these kids a while, and
Yeah, we appreciate
it
it.
means a lot, so thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Anything else from the board? Dr. Need, Mr. Moser, anything else? Motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second. Any opposed? We're adjourned.